Hi, everybody. Welcome. We're so glad that you could make it again today. For those of you who were here yesterday, my name is Christy Germanis, and I am the Director of Marketing and Public Relations at YWCA McLean County. And we are getting ready to get started here. So I thought I would go ahead and share Jeff's bio again, but now I need to unshare my screen. So my apologies. Jeff Woodard is the Director of Marketing and Community Relations at the McLean County Museum of History. Jeff has been with the museum in his current capacity for 15 years. Prior to joining the museum staff under the direction of Greg Coos, Jeff worked as a volunteer in the Stevenson Ives Research Library for 5 years. Jeff has worked with the Bloomington Normal Black History Project to reboot it in 2017. So yesterday was a wonderful, wonderful conversation and presentation, and I'm really excited to learn about our next person. So I will go ahead and turn it over to Jeff.
Hello. Hello. Hope everybody can hear me okay. Thanks everybody for coming in again. Thanks for having me. I had a really good time yesterday as well. I uh, I had a bit of a senior moment. I know later in the program we were talking. Somebody asked about Rosa Parks and when she sat on the bus, and then some of us we settled on 1964 when it was actually in 1955 because that was before the Civil Rights Act. So you should know that. It was a long day. I see some new faces out there. So before we get started, if I can, I'll just do a little bit of housekeeping. Um, I'll tell you a little bit about the Bloomington Normal Black History Project. Before the Bloomington Normal Black History Project was organized, little history was known and recorded on African Americans in McLean County. In the 1930s, Wyatt Wells was commissioned right out of high school by the Works Progress Administration, the WPA, to write a history of Blacks in the area. In the early 1950s, Carabel Washington participated in the effort, writing essays on Blacks, churches, and their choirs. In the 1960s, a group that included Howard and Elaine Bell and Joe Monroe and several others formed to collect local history. In the 1980s, Mildred Pratt began sending her ISU social work students out to tape interviews with elderly members of the Black community. And I believe initially they were going out to document home remedies, and they learned of all these rich stories, so they continued to tape interviews with elderly members of the community. A few years later, the Bloomington Normal Black History Project was launched. Organizers and participants included Dr. Pratt, Carabel Washington, Stephanie Shaw, Reggie Whitaker, the Bells, Wilbert Barton, Lucinda Posey, and Greg Coos. And also serving on that committee was Jack Muirhead and Pam Muirhead from Illinois Wesleyan University. So over the years, project manager, members, and friends have continued to donate materials that span the 19th and the 20th century. Due to these efforts, the Bloomington Normal Black History Project and the McLean County Museum of History now have an outstanding collection of African American artifacts, primary resources, and oral histories. Today, the exhibit Challenges, Choices, and Change explores the experience of living, working, farming in McLean County that includes rich stories of African Americans. And in fact, the A Community in Conflict exhibit asked the question, who had the power? The power to define morality, to gain respect, to instill fear, and much more. And that exhibit is also um, accessible to the public when we open, hopefully in April. So if we can have the first slide up, we'll meet Mr. Willis Stearles. Okay. So much of what we know today about Willis Stearles comes from oral history, members from the community, and friends and family that knew him. And we've also had a chance to interview some of those people, fortunately, that did know and remember him. And we'll talk about that as well. Willis Stearles was born in Bloomington on January 21st, 1890. He was one of four children born to Matthew Stearles and Mary Witherspoon Stearles. His family lived at 814 East Walnut Street in Bloomington. His parents were active members of the Bloomington Normal community. His father, Matthew, like Willis would later, served in the 8th Illinois Volunteer Infantry. His mother was an active member of Wayman AME Church, the Order of the Eastern Star, Mason organization, and Mount Olive Court of Callanth in Knights of Pythias, which is interesting because, of course, a lot of you know the Knights of Pythias was formed after the Civil War, and it was an all-white organization, but African Americans eventually formed their own Knights of Pythias because they were not allowed to join the white organization. Willis, along with his brothers Carl and Raleigh, served in the 8th like their father did. The 8th was an all African American military unit that was formed during the Spanish American War to serve as an occupation force in Cuba. So when Willis and his unit arrived in France in World War I in April of 1918, the 8th became known as Company K of the 370th United States Infantry. The 370th was part of the 93rd Division, one of the few African American divisions of troops sent to fight the war. The 370th had the distinction of being the only regiment in the entire US that had all the African American officers leading the unit. Stearles wrote home to his brother once about his life and what it was like on the front lines. He stated he had been in the trenches 2 times. The 370th, their time on the front lines earned them the nickname Black Devils because of their fierce fighting skills. The French, on the other hand, referred to them as Partridge because of their cockiness and their pride in battle. When the 370th returned to Chicago on February 17, 1919, they went to the Coliseum where some citizens of Chicago had arranged for a reception for the entire regiment. So after the reception, the regiment paraded through the Loop District of Chicago before returning to Camp Grant near Rockford, Illinois, where they began their demobilization process. I really enjoy learning about that story. Rockford is my hometown, and the camp was located along the railroad tracks where now is the site of the Rockford International Airport on the city's south side. And I spent a lot of time in that same spot as a kid, and I had no idea, of course, 50 years prior, Stearles was there. Kind of gives me goosebumps. So after mustering out of service, Stearles and other members of the old 8th Illinois returned to Bloomington by way of Peoria. On February 27, 1919, the citizens of Bloomington, both black and white, held a public reception and organized a day of festivities to honor the Black Devils. It started at the train station, and a banquet followed at Wayman AME Church, and then there was a parade. The day's activities concluded with a reception at the Bloomington Coliseum. It was quite a day. So despite the warm welcome home, however, these distinguished servicemen were still discriminated against after their service to the US and the world. They were barred from joining the white veterans organizations, namely the American Legion. So Stearles and other black veterans formed their own Black American Legion post, the Red Williams Post number 163, and it was named after 2 of their fallen comrades during the war. Going to have the second slide. Some of you may recognize that one. So Willis would become mostly known, right, for his work at Miller Park Zoo. It's not known exactly when he began working for the zoo, but he is the first listed as an animal feeder in the Bloomington Normal City Directory in around 1925. So he didn't know much about animals when he began, but he was eager and ready to learn. An interview with Oscar Waddell discovered what Oscar said when he was a boy, he remembered asking Stearles, "How do you know so much about animals?" And Stearles looked at him and says, "I got books." And he read all he could. He learned through his experiences as well. Over the course of his 33-year career, he developed a keen knowledge for handling animals and formed a unique bond with all of them. Other zoos would ask him for advice on animals. He would tell them how to handle the animals and what remedies worked and which ones didn't. So, he was well liked and well respected as a zookeeper. He was always recognized by his striped bib overalls and that engineer's cap. Everyone knew who he was, including the animals. They recognized him as well. So, according to several members of the community, he got his job at the zoo as a patronage job, of course, meaning that he was appointed by the political party in control of the local government at the time, which was most likely during that period was Republican. Uh, so when the control changed hands, Stearles and the head zookeeper, Charlie Poe, lost their jobs. They got fired. And many in the community were unhappy about that move. Well, apparently they were not the only ones. It was said that the animals didn't seem to think it was fair either. So they went on a hunger strike. Basically, they just stopped eating. Now, according to Jean McCrossan, and she shared the story with me firsthand several years ago, and we also heard an interview from Oscar Waddell, the animals became so upset that they stopped eating, and the new zookeeper did not know what to do. The only choice that they had was to hire both Stearles and Poe back. And when they came back, everyone was happy again, including the animals who went back to eating. So they knew what they wanted and they got what they wanted. Charlie Poe and Willis were very good friends. Color was not an issue. Charlie said after 29 years of working with Willis, if I had to choose anyone as the zookeeper, it would be Willis. Lo and behold, on April 1952, Searles was appointed head zookeeper, and he remained in that position until shortly before his death. At the age of 66, Willis Stearles passed away on April 2nd, 1965, at Brokaw Hospital after suffering a heart attack a few weeks prior. His funeral was held at Wayman AME Church in Bloomington, where he was a member and a trustee. Again, it gives me great pride to know that I also served as a trustee behind such great citizens in McLean County like Willis Stearles, Eugene Covington, and Carabelle Washington. They're all the trustees at Wayman AME Church. Willis is buried at Evergreen Cemetery, and to this day, he's remembered for his patriotism, intelligence, kindness, and service to his community. Jean McCrossan was Willie's neighbor, and she said he was the kindest man that she ever knew. Willis Stearles. Okay. We could certainly take some questions if you want to do that.
Hi, Jeff. This is Emily Bell.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Great presentation.
Thank
My
you.
question is, this is rich history, and we're often looking for opportunities for our young people to see people who look like them
Yes.
reflected in the community. I think it would behoove us to approach the city of Bloomington to have some type of a plaque or something of that nature with Mr. Stearles' picture at the zoo.
That is fantastic. That's a great idea. It is.
I know the few times I've gone to the zoo, there are some plaques up, and I can't remember what they are, but I know there's some there now. But to have that when our young Black kids go through the zoo to see that this was the first person.
Yeah, I don't think there is that kind of recognition at the zoo. Um, just recently we were able to get a marker at the park.
Right. At the beach.
Yeah,
Right.
um, and recognition of the segregation at the Miller Park Beach, and yeah, so that would be something positive, right?
Very much so, and would speak volumes to our young people and the
Thank you.
community.
Thank you.
Because I think it's a little known fact. I certainly didn't know that.
Well, I didn't either until I started working for the museum, and I started doing some research. And as I reminded folks yesterday, when I first came to this community, I sensed that for various reasons, different things that happened to me, that I wasn't welcome here in Bloomington Normal. That was 31 years ago. And I just started learning about the local history, and I started learning about all these different people who had contributed to the well-being of the community. And I realized that that was just so far from the truth, and that I belonged here just as much as anybody else. So history is powerful, indeed, it is. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jeff, Doug Welch, I'll pop in here for a moment, okay?
Hey, Warren.
Yeah, call me Doug. I think the City of Bloomington Parks and Recreation Director is Jay Tetzloff. Is that not correct?
Yes.
He, of course, his office at the government building, the old Champion Federal, can probably be contacted anytime, but he's a very open-minded guy and a former Bloomington Zoo director.
Mm-hmm.
He also participates in the McLean County Zoning Commission, Greenways Committee, which has meetings, which are open, of course, in the government center, I think at least quarterly. But it should be easy to get on their mailing list and get in contact with Mr. Tetzloff, and I'm betting he would be interested in getting something like that done.
Thank you.
Well, Jeff, as you know, and maybe some of the others on the line don't know, but I'm the retired HR director from the city. I know Jeff, I know Mr. Tetzloff very well, and I agree that he would be very receptive to that.
This is fantastic. This is what I envisioned that this whole series would be about, a conversation. People can talk to each other and say, hey, here's my thought. And I think that's a great idea. I really do.
Emily, that's dangerous. You step one step forward and you've got the job, dear.
That's what they tell you. When you open mouth, just be prepared to follow through.
Hey, Jeff.
Let's talk about that. Yeah, let's work on that. Yeah,
Jeff.
Yes.
This is Cleo Peterson.
Hi, Cleo.
Hey, so I didn't hear you say I accept that challenge.
Yeah, I got something else to put on my plate. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
But you guys can help me. I do accept help.
You got Mrs. Bell.
Yes. Any other thoughts about that story? I tend to look at yesterday and today, and I see that, obviously people didn't live without their challenges, but they just seemed to be steadfast and just kept their head down and just kept going and just kept going until things were right.
Hey, Jeff, we have another question in the comments. And does Mr. Stearles have any family still living here in Flemington Normal?
I don't think so. I'm not sure, but I don't think so.
Thank you.
We always get that one. We always get that question. Yeah, thanks. I can see some of the questions too. Okay. Any other questions?
I have more or less a comment since I unfortunately had to miss the beginning half of this due to a meeting. But I just want to let you know I shared some of your information that you shared with my class yesterday as I'm teaching US history, and they were like so interested in hearing about things actually happening like here in McLean County. So thank you for sharing that information. That was really cool to see them participating in a discussion when US history is kind of hard to pull that discussion in.
Right, right. Yeah, people tend to think of history as just dates and forget that it's actually really about the people. I'm sorry, Lauren. Now, where are you teaching?
I'm at Bloomington High School.
Bloomington High School. Good for you.
Yep, in special ed department. So
you deserve a round of applause.
Back at my my old home.
Okay. You don't see that happening a lot where people actually come back, you know, and give back at their old school. That's great. Thanks for sharing that. You know, the book, well, first of all, the exhibit, President's Pride and Passion, A History of African Americans in McLean County. There was a companion publication that was printed, and this is copyrighted, and if you can see that, in 2009. And that's where we're doing the choices activity from, where we're answering those questions. And when this was published, a copy of this went out to basically all of the libraries in McLean County. And I'm talking public libraries and school libraries. And also, if you, I don't know if there's many more of these out in print, so that we give most of them away. They were pretty popular. But if you go to the museum's website, mchistory.org, especially this month, there's a running banner across the top, and you can click on that, and there'll be a list of all the primary resources we have concerning local African Americans, whether it be publications, oral histories, video. So all of that'll be there, included a PDF of President's Pride and Passion, a history of African Americans. So.
Thank you.
Hey, Jeff, I got a question. How you doing? It's Linda.
Hey, Linda.
And appreciate your presentation and the information. As far as the museum itself, you know, you offer a lot of amenities for those individuals that's doing research,
Yes,
and as well as assistance to help you find whatever it is that you're trying to find, or try to increase the knowledge of the information that you're searching for. So I appreciate, you know, coming to the lab, coming to the museum and working with individuals, you know, as I search for information about, in most cases, you know, it's about the contributions of African Americans. It's about the contributions of different churches and the different leaders within our community. So you guys offer, you know, a lot of amenities in learning more about McLean County. So I appreciate that. And I'm not sure if you guys are you guys not open, hybrid open, and if not, what are some of the things that people can do in the meantime as we're still searching for those missing pieces and those gaps in history?
Oh, yes, absolutely. You can always call the Stevenson Ives Library if they're on the third floor. There's someone there daily. that can answer any research questions you have. And if you go to the website, mchistory.org, all of these biographies are there. I mean, just a trove of biographies are recorded of local individuals, and you can go through that, and that'll keep you busy for a long time, actually. But um, yeah, any of the resources you can go to, Illinois Digital Archives and things of that nature, and do some searches there for some of the information that you're seeking. But we do have people that can answer research questions from 9 to 5. And as I mentioned earlier, hopefully we can get the museum back open, I believe in April. That's what we're pushing for.
Then
So,
in additional, you guys will receive history making information as well. So if there's things that are going on in the community, anything that individuals may have that will enhance what you already have, I think it's a benefit as well.
yes, I'm glad you said that, because I also wanted to thank you and NAACP, because for those who are on the call today, NAACP has worked very closely with us over the years to document African American history in McLean County. So we welcome everyone that want to reach out. And I also I look at some of these stories, especially some of these male figures, and we do outreach to schools, and we do we do over 2,000 students with the Evergreen Cemetery Walk, which many of these characters have been featured in that walk. So it's out there in front of them, but I just wonder sometimes, how people would fare if they knew more. Again, we talk about the power of history. If they knew more about people like Willis Stearles and um, his military service, if nothing else. I mean, these were brave individuals at a time where they were less than appreciated, right?
Hey, Jeff, this is Cleo again.
Yes.
Have you heard the name of Willie Tripp?
Oh,
Mr. Willie
absolutely.
Tripp?
Willie is my buddy.
Okay, well, Jeff Vogel at the VAC, the Veterans Assistance Commission, he has, and I have it, a video
I know him
about
as
Willie
well.
Tripp back when he first went into I think it was in the Navy as a young man. And there's a very interesting
Now,
story behind him and being there. So
now
you
is,
may
is
want,
that the one that, I'm sorry, is that the one that's also online?
it could be.
Yeah.
Is that the
Yeah.
one? Did you see it where they interviewed like some of the like they interviewed Esau, my husband, on that one?
Yeah. And they went back to the munitions where he worked.
Who
And
Willie?
yeah, where Willie worked. Yeah, because Willie actually shared it with me when he was
Okay, so you have the same information.
yeah,
Okay. Okay.
he was in the museum. Of course, prior to when he passed, but we spent a lot of time together. And
Well, Willie, yeah, he was very helpful. I mean, because Esau being a veteran, he was in the Vietnam War, but he had a lot of disabilities, but he didn't know that he could claim it, like put a claim in for his disabilities.
mhm,
And it was so hard, but Willie helped him, being being a veteran himself, and being he belonged to all the VAC, the Legion, and all of that. And so he was very instrumental in helping Esau get 100% disability from the VA. So he was quite a guy. He helped a lot of guys, black guys who just didn't know, or knew but had problems because they didn't have the right, like say, they didn't have a separation papers, or they didn't have their medical records in order. You know what I mean? And
mhm.
he helped these guys get their medical records and everything in order so that they could take it to the proper place to start the process of the eligibility of a disabled veteran.
Yes, that's Mr. Willie Tripp.
Yep.
He was also, of course, heavily involved in the American Legion in his post. And Willie Tripp was also, he was a member of the Bloomington Normal Black History Project.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. Sure. Sure was.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning him.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned, Jeff, you mentioned the name of Reggie Whittaker. When I was in high school back in the 50s, we both worked at the Woolworths company, at the Woolworths store in Bloomington. And that's where I met my husband. He came up from Quincy and was training to be a manager. But anyway, we have great regard for Willie Tripp. Well, not Willie Tripp, I mean him too. Reggie Whittaker.
Yes, Reggie. So,
Yeah.
So you worked at Woolworth. I got a question for you. Were you working at Woolworth at any time during the sit-ins?
I was there through my high school years. It would have been in the like 51, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay. Okay.
Was that during the sit-in?
Must not have been if.
Pardon me?
Well, I mean, this was up north. Maybe what wasn't it wasn't going on like that up north. Was that just in the South? Because I'm sure in the 50s, wasn't it? It was that way. Would you think, Jeff?
I don't.
I thought there was some information on the Woolworth counters here.
I think you're right.
I'll have to look that one up.
I don't remember what year it was. I remember hearing about it, but I don't remember it while I was there. But yes, I'm sure it was still going on.
Let's look that one up. Because you know, we did have lunch counter segregation here, and a lot of people could not eat, or if they could get food there, they'd have to get it from the back door out, you know, to go.
Yes, yes. My God.
Yeah, you want to hear some interesting stories? Talk to Reggie.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, I was a good friend with Carabelle too.
Oh, okay.
Yes, we'll be talking about Carabelle Washington tomorrow, and it's like, to be honest with you, that talk right there is the one that really intimidated me the most.
She was quite a woman.
Yeah, because I mean, to condense who she was and what she did in 10, 15 minutes, my goodness.
I was going to say, are you going to have a tough time trying to fit it into the time period? This is Emily again. And I know Mr. Gay is listening in, but he wanted me to share with you, this is kind of going back to yesterday for Dr. Covington. He was saying that one of Dr. Covington's son, Gerard, I think was the one, was actually a police officer. And he thinks there should be a picture of him at the police department, along with the other Black officers. I know one of them's name was Eugene Williams, somebody Thomas, and Arthur, I don't know if it's Watkins or he left me a message. So, but there are several Black police officers that served along with or after Dr. Covington's son, Gerard.
And there was also one before that as well. Was it Hezekiah Tolles?
Okay.
Yeah, Hezekiah Tolles. And Jacob Dean. That name sounds familiar to some folks, or that family. He began his career as a patrolman in 1898. So yeah, send me an email.
Okay.
Yes, I want to look because we want to find more out about Dr. Covington and his family.
Okay.
So Jeff, what years are with these black police officers? So what years are those? Were those?
That was 1885. You know, this was when things were still a little open. As we mentioned yesterday, it got a little rough here, as I called it yesterday, moving into the 1900s and into the 20s, you know, because in the 20s, I believe by 1926, the Ku Klux Klan was membership was in 5 million
Mm.
before their decline. So something happened here in McLean County. No longer were there a lot of shops and businesses Black owned in downtown Bloomington. And but prior to that, it was pretty bustling. You know, you had your barber shops, you know, and things of that nature. But that would have been 1885 and then 1898, Jacob Dean.
So Jeff, do you know what year Paul Ward became a police officer? Remember Brother Paul Ward? He was the pastor's aide. What do you call it? He was a trustee at Wayman way before I came to join Wayman.
Oh, yeah.
Paul Ward.
Yeah, I don't think I remember him, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It was probably I don't know. Maybe it may have been somewhere like Emily, do you know?
No, I don't know that.
Oh, okay.
Don't forget, Ernie Rusk was a Bloomington patrolman in the 60s on a traffic stop. I was respectful and he gave me a break.
All right.
I think Paul may have come before him. Maybe. I'm not sure. Check and see.
I'm writing all these names down. Okay.
And Marvin Thomas.
Oh yeah, I forgot about him.
Yeah, Marvin Thomas was there when I started. He was on the department when I started, as was Ernie Rusk.
And then after Marvin, there was another one who was here for a brief time. I don't remember his name. Yeah, Marvin became a detective, I believe.
Are you talking about Marvin Arnold or Marvin Thomas?
I'm thinking about Marvin Arnold.
No, this is Marvin Thomas. Marvin Thomas was back in the era with Ernie Rusk. The gentleman who mentioned Ernie Rusk should probably remember Marvin Thomas too, because he was in that same time period.
Got you.
Emily, this is Chris Williams. I remember all those names because we were there about the same time.
Right.
Well, yeah, I was a young, immature, stupid kid, but I didn't speed all the time.
Well, like Jeff, I did not feel unwelcome when I moved here, but I got a ticket on College Avenue in Normal for going like 3 miles over the speed limit. I thought that was, I don't think I'd ever had a speeding ticket till I moved here.
That's what Normal did to you.
Yeah, I got that one too.
Oh, okay.
No speeding in Normal. There's no speeding whatsoever in Normal. Jeff, correct. I will say, my roommate so I stayed here in Bloomington Normal, went to ISU, and you didn't feel very welcome here. My roommate, she's actually a Latina, and she didn't want to get a job here in town. She moved back home because she did not feel comfortable being a minority here in Bloomington Normal. So you're definitely not alone in that feeling. That must be something that happens when you come to Bloomington. I don't know, she said she got looks and stuff like that. I've lived here my whole life, so I usually know people everywhere I go. So I never really I've always felt like home here, but she definitely had that feeling that she was an outsider.
Well,
how long ago was that?
Oh, that was just a couple of years ago. We graduated in 2018. So like 2016, 2017, she was feeling that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think most of you are familiar with that old narrative, but like I said earlier, I've been here for 31 years, and when I came here in 1989, I came to work for Mitsubishi Motors, North America, and I just heard it. We had the uniform, we would wear it at work, and it got to the point where I would go home first and just change, because If you went into stores or wherever you went, the gas stations or whatever, people would ask you where you were from, and they'll tell you that their cousin or their nephew applied for a job and he didn't get hired, and you came from out of town and basically took their jobs, right? So yeah, I had some of that, but
Well, this is Cleo again. When we moved here in 1980, I went downtown Bloomington and to one of the jewelry stores. I don't remember which one it was, but I purchased a pair of earrings. I didn't have a credit card. I paid cash for them, and I think I was like 20 because I hadn't planned this to purchase anything. I was just looking, and I was like, maybe I needed another $20 or something. And the jeweler says, he asked me, he says, well, where do you work? And I said, well, I don't work right now. I'm not, my husband, my husband works for State Farm. He said, oh, you can pay me later. Come back tomorrow. So I said, oh, okay. Next day I took him the $20. He let me have the earrings. You know, some different people have different experiences, I guess.
Great share. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, because I'm learning something too, and I wrote some of these names down. So I talked about the choices activity. Christy, are you ready to do a couple of those?
Sure thing.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and launch the first poll.
And you would just basically click on your answer, and we're trying to get a sense of how people think. And I like to tell people, think about if you were there at that time, right? So it's 1904 here. You're a Black Spanish-American War veteran. Your regiment plans to attend the 1904 St. Louis World's Fair. Before the event, the Army officials ask you if your regiment is all Black. He can't provide housing, cooking, supplies for Black vets. What would you do? What would you do? Attend the fair with your own supplies, right? That you will only attend if they're provided, or just refuse to go? We'll give you a minute to answer it, and our tech people, wonderful tech people at the YW, will put up the results.
Yeah.
And just when think about it, that was in 1904 in St. Louis, but right here in Bloomington Normal, Dr. Eugene Covington was running his buggy in and out of his yard, trying to look busy so he can get customers for his physician enterprise.
Jeff, sorry to interrupt. That brings up the question. Sure other people noticed the errors in the Pantograph article this morning about this series. A buggy was printed as Buddy, B-U-D-D-Y. And also the times were stated incorrectly as beginning at 3 p.m., not 2:15 p.m.
Yeah, most media struggles with that now, though, because nothing's really printed locally anymore. And it's just the turnover just so fast. It's just like the internet. You see a lot more of that on the internet too, because it's just, you can't, it's happening so fast, people can't even edit it properly. That's just my thought.
Well, plus I think
Okay.
the Pantograph doesn't have actual humans that copy edit things. They just rely on a machine to check the spelling, but there are errors every day, which it makes me insane. That's just what it's come to.
I'm with you there, Chris.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and end this poll, and I will share the results with everyone. Should be able to see that now. Can everybody see the results?
Okay,
Yep.
Okay, great.
interesting. Does anybody read anything into that? First of all, I would say that people, at least now, would say, you're not going to stop me from doing what I want to do. I'm coming anyway. So,
I think it's also an acceptance of that's the way things were. And so if you want to participate, do what you need to do.
okay.
I think I was just so ignorant about, I would have been so ignorant about racial issues back then.
What do you mean?
I mean that, well, I don't know if I'd be this age back then, how I was supposed to answer that, but I have Black friends now, and it doesn't, I think 30 or 40 years ago, I wouldn't have felt comfortable. I know I would have wanted to, but I don't know that I would have had the more moral compass in me back then that I have now. And I owe a lot of that to my Black friends for accepting me.
Well, I appreciate you.
Yeah, that's one way to look at it, accepting you.
I think it'd be clearer if you just say, what did he do?
Pardon?
I think it would be clearer if the question just said, what did he do? Not what would you do?
Oh, okay.
So I think that's what they're really after.
Well,
I see.
No, actually, this is a conversation, and it's designed. I think it's designed to get you in a conversation. We can tell you because I have the answers, of course. The Spanish American War veteran refused to attend since they knew they would be treated unequally. And so we do 3 of these, and we'll do 2 more, and then I'll follow up behind you. I'm glad you brought that up, Jim, because then I'll give you some little bit more context to all 3 of them, and then you'll find out, exactly happened, why. But that's cursory there. That is basically, yeah, they just refused to go. But what would you do, Jim? You're muted.
Are you talking to me?
My response was take my own stuff.
Yeah. I mean, they're war veterans. I think they could, they could muster up, some equipment and make it happen. But I guess it was principle. And it's just interesting to have people get different people's opinion. Anybody else want to respond to that before we move on?
I will respond.
Linda.
And I know that that's the easy way out, is to take whatever supplies that you may need. If and in most cases you probably couldn't afford it to take your own supplies. But I think that if you fast forward to today, we got those same issues, where some people are economically stable enough to be able to participate in some things, and some people are not economically stable to participate. So you never get to where you need to get to, which allows everybody to be there on the same playing field. So if we keep saying, okay, just bring your stuff, then we never get to addressing the issue. Why I got to be like this and you get this, what I mean? So we never get to have that conversation like we're having today, that's not the answer. The answer is not so that I can go, but I got to be differently. You know, I can go to the restaurant, but I got to go to the back of the door. You know, I can go to the movie, but I got to go up top. You know, so if you don't never dress it, we're going to always be in the back of the bus, the top of the balcony, and at the back of the door.
Very good point. Because not everybody swam in the lagoon at Miller Park, but a lot of people did, and the ones who didn't, eventually they got to swim at the other beach. It took a long time, and it was a long fight, right?
So somebody had to take the stand, you know.
Yeah.
Rosa Parks took the stand. I'm not going to the back no more. You know, somebody took the stand. You know, young people stood up and said in the restaurant, you know, I'm sitting at the counter, lunchroom counter. You know, so somebody had to take the stand. I'm gonna have a peaceful march. Somebody had to take a stance, you know, so that we can all see and expose how life is for the oppressed.
And that's what equality is about, right? You know, you don't have to relegate somebody else to have to scrape and scramble to get cooking supplies to come enjoy a national or international pastime, which is the World's Fair. That's a good point.
Thank God we got friends. That we all brothers and sisters don't all look alike, but we got friends and we got people within this struggle. Thank God for that.
You want to try another one?
Yes.
Okay. So you're a Black woman living in Normal in 1917, right? Yeah. You just graduated with a teaching degree from ISNU. That's what ISU was called at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. They won't hire you because you're Black. What would you do? I find that one interesting too, because you'll hear maybe some people say that you were not afforded an opportunity or the things that you needed based on your race, you know, because I'm Black, and people would say, well, how do you know that? You know, why do you say it's because of your race? Well, back then they told you, you know, you're not going to get this because you are Black. Okay. So there was no question about it. So at least you knew where you stood, right? So. Okay. $18, $19, and $25. I just had one of these. Green tea. Okay. I think we're ready.
Yeah, let's go about another 10 seconds. Let everybody get it in there. There's about 10 people who haven't answered yet.
Okay. Fantastic.
All right.
While we're waiting, I hear that someone said there was 2 main Woolworth sit-ins in 1960 and 63. Okay. So 8% said they would find a non-teaching job in town. Again, you know, most of us said we would leave town to find a teaching job. And 23% would basically sit in protest. But now I'm reminded of what you said earlier, Ms. Foster, about the inequality in that situation. You know, everybody can't afford to leave town to go find another job. or don't have the wherewithal, especially back then. So, any other thoughts on that one? I can tell you the answer. What she did was she left town to find a teaching job, so she was able to do that. Anybody got any other thoughts on this?
Well, my thought would be if that person, that was their passion, that's what they went to school for, and that's what they really wanted to do. And if they had to wear, if they could leave, then that's what you do. Probably went to a bigger city, maybe, you know, where there was more opportunities for a Black teacher.
And we're asked if we put ourselves in someone else's shoes, but I think at this point, at this higher percentage, we're more mobile now, right? So it's like, hey, if I gotta go, I gotta go. It's interesting. Yeah. Okay. All right. I've got one more, Christy.
All right, I will get that launched. Just a second. And there we go.
A wealthy white person living in Bloomington in 1934. Then the Great Depression, people out of work. Some of your friends fired at Black servants to hire white help. What would you do? While we're waiting for the poll, anybody want to speak to what the possible dilemma would be there for you?
I'm sorry, it's hard for me to place myself as a white person. With power. I just, no, I guess I could, but wow, this is usually not the twist.
You're like, oh, this feels good. Oh my goodness.
Being that the person is rich, I mean, they could afford to keep them all, but it may be some inner reactions with the whites, because like, okay, you could hire more Blacks or whites if you let these Blacks go, but from a financial standpoint, they could afford to keep all. I mean, but because of this, the time and the racial thing, it may have been.
I just, whites and Blacks working together as slaves. I mean, with the, during the time of the Great Depression, I just wrestle with that, because whites have always told us, though, during that time that they were, and today, in some cases, that they're superior. So to bring people together like this, when in fact, society says that the whites is always up here. So it just kind of hard for me to imagine that something like that would go on, and they would work together side by side, and they would even actually know how to work, to do the work or want to do the work.
And there's an exceptions, right? Because just what you described there happens a lot here in Plain County. They were out of necessity, Blacks and whites work together and on equal in some cases. I think
the thing is that when you have employees, you know them in some personal ways too. You know about their little kids at home that they're supporting, and the illnesses of their elderly relatives and all. So you already know the Black employees that you have, and you have a sympathy for them. And that natural sympathy might override, for me, it would override my idea, well, I'd rather help some complete strangers who happen to be white. I'd have an emotional loyalty to the people who were helping me and who were on the team with me as my employees who were Black.
That's a very good point.
Is
Ruby, go ahead.
Is it just me, or I automatically thought of right now? The pandemic has put us all in this position yet again as to which businesses are going to survive and how, and which are not, and which people get vaccines and which people get unemployment, and which people get this and which people get that. And it seems to me like it's playing out again very much like it would have then, and it still plays along racial lines. Or not. What? Okay, I'm the only one that thought that.
No, I'm thinking in 1934. Okay, let's say there was the white person who had say the Black person had a pretty high position with the wealthy person, and then there was the white person had the Black person had a pretty decent job with the white person, and then the white person had maybe if they had a little bit decent than the Black person. If I'm not being confused, I just think the Black person might get demoted. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. Like if the Black person would be doing the lowest of the job, probably the lowest of the job because that white person didn't want to do it. But if the white wealthy person didn't have anybody else to do it, then that would be the Black person's job, the lowest job.
And that's kind of what's in my head. It's kind of what's happening right now, in that people that are hourly wage and are laid off are struggling way more than people that are salaried and in a business that can still be open. And
that's not race.
Okay, then I'm sorry, not my conversation.
No, this is good. That's good. I mean, there's thoughts, right? And let's face it, we don't have the venue or the means to get together as we are today and have these kind of conversations. I love it. I love it.
Well, I think if I lived back then and I had Black servants, I would feel like, I would think about it. If I hired white people to take their places, well, as soon as something good happened in the community, the white people would go off and take a job. The Black people would still be stuck as servants.
Okay.
Back then, I mean, that's what I wasn't born yet then, but that's how I think I'm thinking.
Yeah, again, there's always the exception, and I think Ellen, you touched on this as well. For example, Ruby Edwards was a domestic at the Ewing Manor for Hazel Buck Ewing, and her and her husband Herman, they lived on the premises. They lived at Ewing Manor. He drove and she tended the gardens and did domestic stuff, but they had a really more practical relationship.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I mean they depended on each other. So yeah, okay.
Jeff, also Ruby Edwards was the first female NAACP president here in Bloomington Normal.
There you go.
I'm the second.
There you go.
Hmm.
And we're proud of that, right? Yeah, because I mean, she belonged to a lot of organizations and she kept all of that going. So again, like I say, that those relationships were pretty dynamic, you know.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, especially here, for what I know about local history. So, and I think it's good to know that. A lot of people don't know that. So, Jim, um, there was actually two answers to that one. It was some people would replace their black servants with white workers. They went ahead and did that. And then some would keep all their employees. So if I go back, I'm going to give you a little context to all of these. The first one, dealing with the Spanish American War veteran and the World's Fair. I'll just read this to you. The 8th Illinois National Guard was asked to bring their own supplies to the World's Fair in St. Louis with the following letter. Of course, kindly inform me whether your regiment is colored, and would you be willing to bring your own tents and cooking outfit? And of course, they did not attend. The question of the Black woman who lived in Normal in 1917, who had the teaching degree. Few Black students who graduated college couldn't find related jobs in town. Wilbur Burton moved to Indiana, and Julia Duff moved to Oklahoma to find a teaching job at a Black girls' school. Her sister Alberta worked as a housekeeper for the Stevenson family. And of course, Julia Duff moved to Oklahoma to teach. She taught in Tulsa. She was there for the Tulsa riots. So we've got some insight on the Tulsa riot because of that connection. The last one, we'll read that one to you. During the Depression, white workers began to work lower paying jobs that Black people could have done, right? Many families fired their Black help and replaced them with white workers, but some, like the Bikes and the Ewings, kept their Black employees.
Yay.
There you go. Well, that's all I have for you today. Unless someone wants to make some comments, I'm all ears just to understand, what we're feeling today, or how this relates to where we're at today. Yeah, got a few minutes.
Hey, Jeff, this is Cleo.
Yes.
I noticed, what was that, about, has it been 10 or 15, 20 years ago when we started having the Great Migration, they called it? People migrating from, say Chicago, St. Louis, East St. Louis. That was when I would hear white people talking about those people are not people that the Black people that already were here. They refer to it as, these were our people. We're talking about, like I said, 10, 15, 20 years. These are our people. These people that's coming from Chicago and St. Louis, East St. Louis, wherever, they're not our Blacks. That's what it was. This lady said, these are our Blacks. That's what she said. The people that are already here are our Blacks. These people that are coming from different places, they're not our Blacks, and we really don't appreciate them coming. That's what I heard that from white people, some white people. They felt
So have I. I've heard that too.
Yeah, they felt comfortable saying it. I mean,
this is Sarah Breeden. I attended the candidate forum when Nikita Richards was running for McLean County Clerk, and Kathy Michael, who talks about being from Chicago, like way back when, and Nikita well, she would always talk about, well, we don't need people coming from Chicago, and was just horribly derogatory toward Nikita, and called her girl, and she was just awful. But she introduced the whole Chicago thing, the Chicago politics coming to McLean County. We don't need that here, and it was just disgusting.
Mhm.
And that was just a couple years ago.
No, okay.
That's interesting. And I've heard that as well. But we have to remember, for example, my parents were, of course, part of the Great Migration. They came from Mississippi for opportunities. And my dad ended up fighting in the Korean War. My mom was a licensed practical nurse, and they came from basically nothing in Mississippi, except for the fact that my family did have land there. But that was basically the start. That was near the end of, that was in the 50s. So that heavy migration was in the 40s. But by then, a lot of people had lived in the Chicago area and made lives for themselves. So, I mean, this whole thing about stigmatizing people, or the people that are coming from the larger cities are coming to Bloomington Normal to cause trouble and all this kind of stuff. When you think about history, you got to remember too that these are descendants of other people who are descendants of other people who had to do the same thing that you had to do. Right?
Jeff, you're just, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Cleo.
Okay, so you mentioned, like how your parents had land,
Mhm.
where they migrated from.
Mhm.
Your family had land. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay, so do you realize that even in the 50s, when I was a little girl, I lived in the South for about the first 9 or 10 years of my life. My grandfather had a farm. We had land. But do you realize that back then, land for Black people didn't mean anything? Because you couldn't, like, the Black farmer needed money to plant the crop. So he go to the white man or to the general store. You've seen this on some of these movies, to get the money, they sign for it, and at the end of harvest, they go back to the store, to the white man, and they're like, okay, I'll pay my bill and take, I've got money coming and I'll pay you out of that. And then the white man said, well, I'm sorry, you fell short this year. So now you're gonna have to use your land to pay this bill. And that's how in the South, how white people chipped away at Black people's land, because Black people couldn't get money for their land. They could only use their land like as collateral or as like money. And that's how a lot of Black people lost their land in the South. And I just saw that on one of these Black experiences shows last night. That's how money, land was not, you had the land, but the white folks wouldn't give you any money for your land, but they would let you put it up as collateral and take it from you. Some people ended up, they had maybe, like, I know my great grandfather, from what I've read in our genealogy, he had like 500 acres of land, but it just kept dwindling and dwindling and dwindling down. And my grandfather, he lost a lot of land that way. Well, and then today we have a little bit left, and just think if we still had those 500 acres.
That's an issue. I mean, that's an ongoing thing. As of most recently, anyway, as far as I know, there's only less than 2% of land held by African American farmers in the U.S.
Mm-hmm. I think everybody, like at least 2 or 3 times a year, I'll get a letter from somebody in another state offering to buy my land. And one guy, It was
I
really
got
an
one of
insult.
those yesterday.
Huh?
I got one of those yesterday.
Did you? One guy gonna offer me, he said, I'll give you $20,000. I'll come to your door with a check in my hand. All right.
Mhm.
My man worth way more than that. You gonna give me $20,000? Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, thanks again, everybody. Looked like Sally Payne put up a shameless plug. Many of you know Rick Lewis, and he will be presenting his portraits as part of the art celebration of Black History Month tomorrow from 1 to 2 p.m. on Zoom. So be aware of that. I've seen that. That's pretty phenomenal. Okay.
You're muted, Sally.
Well, I just said it's right. It'll be over before we join Jeff tomorrow at 2:15. So it's kind of a nice little package, a little time built in there for a potty break.
Okay. Yeah, I'm looking.
Yeah, that sounds perfect.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm continue to learn a lot. So, like I say, I'm a little I will say I'm a little intimidated, but to package Carabel Washington into such a short segment, but I'm excited about it. And you know, some people say that you consider yourself lucky to be a Carabel Washington project, and I was one of her projects. So
Yeah, great. You know her personally up
yeah,
close.
yeah.
Mhm.
So I'll look forward to that. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Christy. Thank you,
Thank you.
YWCA. Thank you, Tiffany. All of you, because like I say, I'm learning a lot from this.
Yeah.
This
Hope
is
to
my
see you
first
all
time doing
tomorrow.
it. Okay.
Thanks, Jeff.
Take care.
Thank you
Bye,
again, Jeff.
everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.